The lighting is already set up, so let's start with the default material. Thing is, we have another more sophisticated fabric for the curtains. And the curtains are translucent. In VRAY, it works a bit differently. So we need to create a two-sided material and link our fabric to that material. Hello, welcome back to Render.courses. Today we're gonna set up materials in VRAY. And so we've already done the same on Karana, and I'll leave a link to that tutorial on the screen. Okay, in this lesson we'll be working in VRAY, so our task for today is to create materials for walls, for lamps, curtains, frame, and vase. And then we'll set up wood textures for the table, for our chairs, and for the floor. And finally, we'll assign materials to pictures, to rug and curtains. There's a lot of work ahead, so we'll be moving from simple things to more complex ones. The lighting is already set up, so let's start with the default material. And we'll go ahead and start with the walls. So first things first, we'll go to Render Setup and uncheck Override MTL because we don't need it anymore. And we need to see the materials. So in order to be able to see the materials, we should switch off Override MTL. Okay, so let's restart the interactive render and see how the scene looks now without the materials. Okay, let's get started. So I start by pressing the M key on the keyboard to open Material Editor, and I'm gonna create a VRAY material. So we go to VRAY, VRAY MTL, and drag it here. So my advice is to rename your materials to avoid unnecessary confusion. So we do a double click on the material and rename it to walls. And our walls have a standard white color. And we don't want to use a totally white. So let's make it 210, 220 so that the light spreads out correctly. Because in real life, there are no materials that are completely white. Okay, so we don't dive too deep into the settings. And you can set up plenty of different settings for any material, but we won't be able to do that within this mini course. All right, so if you're willing to take a deeper dive into the architectural visualization and master material setup and visual aspects of it, you can sign up for our training course where you'll learn how to create these amazing interior and exterior renders. Looks great, right? Hundreds of students have already completed our program. So I invite you to join our community and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right. With that said, let's go back to our scene. So we've set up a default material, and what we'll do now is we'll add some reflections, just a little bit, to make it look more realistic. Let's get some glossiness to 0.7, and this will produce light, blurry reflections. They'll be barely visible. And now we're gonna assign materials to the walls and the ceiling. So with Control pressed, I click Assign Material to Selection. The render has updated, but we can't see any changes almost because it's just white paint. All right, now next, let's create a more complex material. Metal. we'll create a new VRAY MTL and we're gonna call it metal. It's gonna be black. And likewise, we don't have totally black materials in real life, so that's why we'll set value to 5 and assign the material to the lamp and also the frame. All right, so we can see that objects have turned black, but in the reference, the materials has reflections and glares, as you can see. So we'll go ahead and we'll try to imitate them. And this is where we need the reflection parameter. And we can make it a bit lighter, which will make it look better. All right, and also increase its value a little bit, up until the result matches the reference, more or less. And you can see that the reference image is more contrasting in a way than our render. And we're gonna add contrast during post-editing, so you don't have to worry about it now. For now, we need to focus on the materials, and I can already see that the reference is less glossy. So we're gonna reduce glossiness to 0.6, and that should pretty much do it. Select the lamp region to see how the material looks, and well, I'm pretty happy with the result, I should say. So it's quite simple material. All right, and now let's make a ceramic material, but we'll make it more glossy and make it look more reflective. So we'll select this region with the vases, create a VRAY MTL, and we'll call it ceramic. Next, we'll set diffuse to about 5 or 6, almost black, and we'll also assign the material to the objects. All right, and next we need to set up reflection. Let's set it to all the way up to the maximum, and we have two parameters, Fresnel and glossiness, and let's reduce glossiness to 0.8 to sort of recreate the same effect as in the reference. In fact, we can increase glossiness a little bit and reduce reflection. So I'm just gonna lower this value a little bit and set glossiness to 0.7. And now it looks more like it should. Now it matches the reference better. All right, now let's move on to a more complex material. And also let's not forget about the pictures. The pictures are made of pretty simple materials. It's a beige frame and the canvas itself. So we'll create a VRAY MTL and we'll call it white plastic. We'll set diffuse to 230. And we'll also set reflection to the maximum value and glossiness to 0.9. And now we just need to assign this material to passport 2. It's a simple white plastic, and we can preview it in this window here. It's a default material, and I think we should apply the same material to the baseboard as well. All right, now let's move this preview over here, and now the frame. So with shift pressed, we copy this plastic material and we'll call it organic plastic. Let's make its color a mix of rosy and dark beige, which will look good. The rest of the settings we'll leave by default, and next we'll just assign the material to the frames. Actually, I forgot to assign the white plastic here. And now the canvas. So we create a VRAY MTL, and I've already prepared some textures to use in the scene. And this is a texture for pictures. And I'll link it to diffuse. As you can see, it's made of 2 parts, 2 segments, and we can apply this texture to both pictures, and then we can use UV map to position it in the proper way. So let's go ahead and do this. We assign the texture to the canvas, and here's our 2-part image, and we need to put it the right way. And to do this, we need to apply the UV map modifier to the canvas. So select UV map from the list, select planar. The width is 807 millimeters. So let's double it to 1600. And next we click Gizmo and shift it until the right part of the image shows on the canvas. And then we can assign the material to the other picture. We can just drag and drop a UV map right on the picture. Actually, it won't work. All right, I had this picture selected. So let's assign UV map to it again. So we change width to 1600, and then we do a right click on a rotation tool and shift gizmo along the Y until the right part of the image shows on the canvas. All right, let's see if it looks good. Yeah, it does. So let's proceed to the rug. Select the region with the rug, create a material, and I will just call it rug. So not to get confused. And I've prepared a texture beforehand, so for all the textures that we're using today, you can click the link under the video and find them there. So drag it here, link it to diffuse, and assign it to the rug. We need to select the rug first, obviously, and then assign material to selection. And we can see that our rug has horizontal lines while the lines and the reference are vertical. So this means that we simply need to rotate our texture. So we double click the texture, and here we set W angle to 90 degrees. All right, done. Texture's been rotated by 90 degrees. So now let's go ahead and add some relief to this material. All right, so this is where the displacement modifier comes in handy. And the displacement modifier, this is a map that creates relief and geometry, and this will make our rug look more realistic in certain areas. So in places like chair legs, a table, things like that. So let's apply VRAY displacement mod to our rug, and you'll see that it just makes it look better. So find it on the list, here it is, then take this texture, drag it here, and link it to text map as an instance copy. All right, set amount to 4, 3 or 4, 4 is enough, and select 2D mapping to make it render faster. Also, we set resolution to 1024 to make the image sharper and more detailed. And as you can see, our rug is pretty easy to set up. So now let's set up a material for the floor. And if you look at the reference, you won't see any boards. It's a solid piece of floor. And this means that we can use one material, one texture, and we drag a VRAY MTL here, and we're just gonna call it floor. And now we need to pick some wood texture, and we can use this dark one or this one, but it needs some corrections. So let's go for the second option, and I'll show you how to correct the color of the texture so that one and the same texture can be used to imitate several materials. So we drag this wood texture to material editor, link it to diffuse, and assign it to the floor. And we select the floor and assign, and the texture's too big actually. Let's rotate it by 90 degrees. And we set a W angle to 90, and then we need to assign UVW map to the floor. Let's make dimensions. Actually, we should come up with a more realistic dimensions. Probably 1200 by 1200. Yeah, that'll do. And the texture is actually too light for our scene. So we should probably make it darker, because the wood in the reference is darker. So this is actually easy to do. So we'll use a special card, which is called color correction. And we can find it by heading over to maps, general, and then color correction. And we just add it between our texture and the material. And then we'll switch to advanced mode and set gamma below 1. Let's make it 0.5. See, now the wood has become darker. Let's bring it down to 0.4 actually. And you can see that it obtained a kind of a reddish shade. So we can get rid of this shade by reducing saturation parameter. And now it looks good. Much better. All right, next we need to set up reflections, and we increase reflection parameter until the color is kind of closer to white. We also need to reduce glossiness because our floor is now way too glossy. So let's set glossiness to 0.7. And this makes the floor look much better. So we might need to reduce reflection just a little bit. Something like that. All right, looks like we're done with our default materials. Now our task gets a bit more complicated. We're gonna work with wood. So I think we should probably start with the table. So we'll create a VRAY MTL and we'll call it wood table. And let's go ahead and drag the texture to material editor. Or you can just copy the texture by pressing Shift and drag it. So link it to diffuse and assign it to the table. And here though, wood fibers have this horizontal direction, and in the reference they're vertical. So that means we should rotate our texture by 90 degrees. And now let's work with reflections. So I'll set the value to around 180, and already you can see that the the table turn glossy. We can reduce glossiness to say 0.7, but that's not quite what I had in mind. In the reference, we can see fine sort of veins, some small details, and very thin, sophisticated detailed gloss. So we need to assign an extra texture to glossiness, and this will affect the reflection on the table and create a more realistic sort of feel. So we add an identical texture map, only black and white, and drag it here. Then we'll link this texture to glossiness as an instance copy. And don't forget to give this texture a 90-degree turn. Let's see what we've got. All right, looks like the gloss now looks more sophisticated, which makes the wooden surface more realistic. And in the reference, the wood is more glossy and less matte. So let's try to do the same. We can lessen the effect that the glossiness map has on our material. Bring it down from 100%. So we can do this by double-clicking the material, scroll down, and here we can see that glossiness is set at 100%, and there's a map assigned to it. So let's reduce this value to say 70%. And also let's increase glossiness parameter to 0.9. And this way, 30% of glossiness properties will be determined by the glossiness parameter, while the remaining 70% will be determined by the texture itself. And this is how we can balance the glossiness map and the glossiness parameter. So here's a very useful trick for you. Also, we can link this texture, the parameter called bump. It characterizes roughness. Let's see what changed. This parameter adds extra roughness. My advice is don't overdo it, because it's really easy to go over the top with the bump parameter. So let's reduce the bump map to 5. It'll give us a slight kind of roughness, and it won't affect our render like drastically. Also, I see an intense white glare on the table. Let me check the scene. Must be sunlight. So let's go to sun settings and uncheck effect specular. The glare is gone, so you can see the difference before and after. If you spot a strong glare, it probably has to do with the light source. And by the way, we also need to check this light that illuminates our scene. Well, that doesn't look too good. So let's leave it as it was. Now, let's work with the chairs. We're gonna set up a material for one chair and then copy it around the table. Easy stuff. So let's remove the chairs and leave just a single chair, the closest to us. And let's create a black wood material. And we'll create a VRAY MTL and name it black wood. Color is black. We'll set diffuse to 5. Now let's assign it to the object. Object is grouped, so let's click group, open, and select back elements and assign the material. And we see the chair has become black. Let's increase reflection. And now we can use the same texture, the same that we assigned to the glossiness map. So press Shift, copy the texture, and link it to reflection glossiness. All right, now the glossiness is apparent, but we need to give it a 90-degree turn. So we set W angle to 0. Okay. It's pretty easy. Actually, I forgot to apply the turbo smooth modifier to the back of the chair to make it, that's right, make it smoother. All right. And now we can add some bump, just a slight bump. And we'll link the texture to bump and set the value. Don't overdo it, just 5. And I also think that the wood in the reference looks a bit more glossy, so let's change the glossiness a little bit. So the glossiness parameter is set at 1. And as for glossiness map, I think we should probably reduce its effect to 70%. That should do it. Actually, you know what? Let's make it 40 or 50. Oh, it looks better already. You can see some glare. And if you want the reflections on your material to look more sort of homogeneous, you can assign the same map to reflection. And let's see. Okay, so we'll link the map to reflection and make sure you don't confuse it with refraction. All right. And the wood has come alive, you could say. Let's say diffuse to 3 to get a darker shade. All right, that's good. Now it looks more like the reference. So now let's work with the fabric. We'll start with a default fabric. I'll create a VRAY MTL and I'm gonna call it accordingly. To download the textures, you can click the link under this video. So let's drag it here and link it to diffuse and assign it to the seat. Oh, it looks good. So let's link this texture to bump to give it a more roughness. And we'll also reduce the bump value to 10. Thing is, we have another more sophisticated fabric for the curtains. And the curtains are translucent. And if you look at the curtains in the reference, some spots are darker while others are lighter. And this means that the material lets light through. So we need to imitate this effect. And by the way, we need to lower the curtain a little bit. Let's just do it really fast right now. Select the lower point. Check use soft selection, increase fall off, and stretch all the way to the floor. Let's go back to our interactive render. For this type of material, VRAY has a special shader called VRAY two-sided MTL. There it is. So let's assign it to our curtains. And if you watched our Corona material setup video, you probably remember that we set up translucency in VRAY it works a bit differently. So we need to create a two-sided material and link our fabric to that material. So take the fabric that we use for the chairs and link it to front material. Almost done. And now we need to set it up. We can check this option, multiply by front diffuse, to make the curtain look thicker. We can also assign the texture to translucency. Although I'm not sure that will work, but let's try anyway. So we'll link the texture to translucency map. Oh, it looks okay actually. But we can also just make the color darker or reduce translucency map effect to 50%. And this is how we can make the curtains look heavier and thicker. All right, looks good. What's left? Now, oh, that's right. We need to arrange the chairs, add a bouquet to the vase, and also render the scene. So let's stop our interactive render and focus on the chairs. Let's select a group and close it. Then, holding Shift, we'll make an instance copy of our chair, rotated by 90 degrees, and put it here. That's fine. And then, keeping Shift pressed, copy another chair, and then select two chairs, and use the mirror tool. And that just makes it much more easier. So check the Y-axis, then instance. Let's make it X. Okay. And we got another copy of chairs. Now let's mirror this chair along the Y-axis and put it here. Let's switch to Corona camera to see how things look. Looks great. And now the bouquet. The bouquet image is available under the link. So what we do is we go to File, Import, and then Merge. Select the decor file, open it. Let's scale it to make it look bigger and put it deeper in the vase. So I can actually see that branches overlap. So we'll use the soft selection tool to correct this. Select the points, check use soft selection, and reduce fall off and scale down the branches. Let's set up a new material. Create a VRAY MTL. Pick a dark brown color for it. And assign it to our flowers. Let's run a test render. Now, we could continue to set up the flowers because it's a rather complex thing. But let's stop here. Let's split it into several sub-objects. And we go to General Multi-Sub-Object. Let's see what IDs this object has. Select a sub-object. There's ID number 3, ID number 2. Number 2 must be our berries. And our berries are number 3. Branches are 2 and 1. So let's do the following. Let's create a multi-material with 3 sub-materials. to IDs number 1 and 2, we assign the brown material for dry branches. To ID number 3, we assign the red material for red berries. Let's increase reflection and set glossiness to 0.7. And this material will link to ID number 3. And now let's assign this multi-material to the bucket. See, now it has red berries. Looks very good. All right, next on our to-do list is rendering and color correction, which is all post-editing. So this is it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.